Hello and welcome to the Peak Performance Podcast, episode number 6. Today we're going to tackle a topic that's on the minds of many fitness enthusiasts and gym goers for years. That is the elusive six-pack. We'll explore why it's so challenging to sculpt a six-pack and reveal some secrets to finally help you achieve that six-pack. And for those tuning in for the first time, the Peak Performance Podcast focus is on helping ambitious professionals reach peak performance in all areas of their life through cutting-edge fitness insights from two of the world's best fitness consultants that I know of. My co-hosts, Andrew Manashian, former IFBB Australasians men's physique champion, and Mick, CEO of Performance U. And also today we have a special guest, Daniel Raz. He's a fitness coach from Canada, and he specializes in helping men lose 30 pounds without going to the gym. So he's definitely going to have some tips for us in how to attain that elusive six-pack. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I'll kick it off by asking, why is it so hard to get a six-pack? I've been trying for months. I've been trying for years, and it's just sometimes it doesn't seem possible.
I'll give my answer. I think there's three main reasons. So there's lack of knowledge would be the first one. Lack of willpower would be the second. And then third would be, I would say, would be environmental factors or disease, sickness, etc. For example, you could have everything else right, but if for example, all your food choices are extremely poor and just sugar left, right, and center, blah, 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 it's going to destroy the gut lining, etc., etc. And then all your functions that should work properly when it comes to calories in, calories out just aren't going to function as well as what they should. But for most people, I don't think that's the main issue. The main issue is more so lack of knowledge and lack of willpower. But we could even argue the lack of knowledge side of things, because everyone knows, unless you're like in some rural village and you've never, interacted with the rest of the society, everyone knows that it's going to be eat less, move more. Everyone knows that. It's like, I need to fix my diet to some degree and I need to do some form of exercise. Pretty much, we could argue 18 plus, 99% of the world would know that. Again, not counting any rural places that don't have any contact or whatever. So most of civilized society in this day and age. So we can't really use that as an excuse. Most people know they need to do something. Do they need to have our level of knowledge to get the results? I would argue no, because if we just get some, let's say 6 foot and he's 150 kilos, 50% body fat. If that guy actually used his willpower and he goes, okay, I'm going to walk, and that's all you're going to fucking do. I'm going to do 10,000 steps, and then I'm going to eat less calories. I guarantee you that guy's going to get some results. You keep doing that all the way. Eventually, you work your way down to six-pack abs. Obviously, it's not going to be a quick and easy journey, but I'm sure if that guy wanted to know, especially with the internet in this day and age, you can look up for yourself. Don't be fucking lazy. Get onto Google. How do I get a six-pack abs? Chat GPT these days. We can just ask Chat GPT. That will give you a fucking comprehensive answer. So we don't need a trainer. There isn't really any excuse in this day and age for 99% of the world to not be able to get to that level. You don't necessarily need an elite level trainer. Obviously, they're going to give you a shortcut to that journey, which would make things a lot easier. So like we've talked about this on a previous episode, right? Do you want to go through all the struggles, the hassle, this and that, and learn everything yourself? Yeah, you can do it, but it's going to take you a shit ton longer and a lot more time and effort to get there. For example, you might get a six-pack in 3 years, as opposed to, oh, hey, mentor/trainer, here's some money, get me there in fucking 6 months, right? Yes, you paid a bit of money, but you're going to get there quicker. So I think the number one reason that most people aren't in the shape they want to be or don't have that six-pack, yes, I'm fully going to accept lack of knowledge as an excuse. I'm fully going to accept gut health issues as an excuse. But I think the main reason for most people is lack of willpower or not willing to put in the hard work. So that's my summary of the answer right there.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah. I have a couple of things to say about that as someone who's been trying to get a six-pack for over a year, and I definitely don't lack willpower. I know how to get it done, and as far as I know, I don't have any health issues or environmental factors. So I'll come back to you with more on that, Andrew, but let's turn it over to Daniel to get your thoughts. Why is it so difficult to get a six-pack?
Definitely. Firstly, everything that Andrew said is spot on. It definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm going to rephrase it and say my interpretation. So I would say the reason why some people find it difficult is because they don't focus on what I call the easy wins. So things that don't take a lot of time or effort, and move them in the favor. So before we start the recording, I saw that Andrew has a water bottle within arm's reach. So do I. If you have a water bottle within arm's reach, you will be hydrated. You won't be nearly as hungry. A lot of people think they're hungry, but they're actually dehydrated or bored, right? So if you drink more water, then you won't carry as much water weight. You will lose a lot of weight and your stomach won't be as bloated, right? Another easy win is to improve your sleep quality. You might not be able to get 8 or 7 hours of sleep every single day, but you can always improve the quality of your sleep. Another easy win is right now I'm standing, this is a standing desk. Whenever I do calls, I always stand. If I'm ever talking on the phone, I'm never sitting, I'm always standing and walking. The time is going to pass anyways, might as well move, right? Another easy one is like cold showers. You're gonna take a shower anyways, might as well burn a few extra calories. So if you have certain habits implemented, then you will much easier be in a caloric deficit, and that's the only real way to lose body fat. And to elaborate on another really good point that Andrew made is your environment plays a huge role. So for me to get ice cream, I can't just go to my fridge and open the cabinet and get ice cream. There's no ice cream. I'd have to drive 15 minutes to the grocery store, talk to the cashier, grab the ice cream, come back and eat it. It's a hassle. So it actually takes effort for me to make a bad decision, and it takes less effort for me to make the good decision. So if you're able to flip it so that it doesn't take real willpower to make the right decision, then you'll be on your way and it will make things easier. Now, obviously, there's also going to be temptations. If you have David Goggins' willpower mentality, even if your house only has willpower, you still won't eat it because you have that mindset. But reality, most people are pretty fragile. So instead of trying to increase the willpower, which is definitely is going to help, I think it's better to start with making it easy to make healthy choices and make it more difficult to make the unhealthy choices.
Okay, good stuff. And then over to you, Mick.
Both those two then half the top. But I think one missing ingredient you guys missed was stress. Too much stress, too much cortisol. Too much cortisol promotes a lot of fat gain around your midsection. So I think one of the biggest mistakes people when they go wrong is they want to do more. So they want to train more training, more cardio, less food. That seems to be the common thing, right? And then you might get some results, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to fail. So I think the best way to think of your stress as like a bucket, right? Now, your bucket's already full from life. You got work stress, you got financial stress, you got marital stress, physiological stress, chemical stress. And then I go into the gym and I mindlessly beat myself up. Now what's going to happen to my bucket? It's going to overfull, right? It's going to overflow. And then my body is not going to adapt. So what we do personally, what I do and what we do as trainers, we want to increase the size of that bucket, metaphorically. So your body can handle more stress. And so pretty much what we want to focus on is to increase our body's ability to recover and adapt. All right. So if you're going to go in there and just train hard and you're not going to recover from it, the only good workout is the one you can recover from. And there's no point in training hard unless you can adapt to that hard training. Like I mentioned before, so stress, too much inflammation. These aren't bad things. You want them in moderation, but too much promotes obviously fat gain around the midsection. So when people are stressed, what do they tend to do? They eat more. Why? Because it makes them feel better. Also, when you're stressed, your sleep's going to be shitty. Poor sleep, we all know where that leads. And also, and going off what you guys were saying, calorie in, calorie out, simply just move more. But when people make the mistake, people are eating more than they think. When you put a lens on their nutrition, there's a lot of hidden calories in our foods. And I've personally made that mistake where I thought, no, what am I doing wrong here? What I just mentioned, and I came to the realization that I was eating more than I actually thought. So that's my sort of why people fail when it comes to not getting a six-pack. They try to do more. They're just doing too much. and their body's not adapting to the stress.
I see that. That's very interesting. That could be me because I'm doing everything else right as far as I know. Intermittent fasting, 12 hours a day. Don't eat breakfast. Don't eat lunch. I only eat one meal a day. That's dinner. That's the piece of steak. I do really excruciating abdominal workouts at the boxing gym. I go boxing 3, 4, 5 days a week. And it's still been very difficult to get that six pack.
Are you counting your
So-
calories and tracking your macros?
No, because in my mind, I'm only eating one piece of steak at night, and I'm just assuming that that one piece of steak is probably not enough to put me in a calorie surplus.
So
Are you-
have you been tracking your weight and all these other factors as well, your stress levels and all of that over time? Have you been tracking that since you've been doing just the one steak a day?
Well, actually, since I started doing the one steak a day, I've dropped from 98 kilos to currently 91 kilos. So it has
Okay.
worked. It has worked,
Okay,
but
so
I'm still not at the six pack.
How long have you been doing it for?
This one meal a day since the new year.
So you've lost 6 kilos since the New Year's? Hang on, was it
60,
98 to 91 or 97 to 91?
98.
98 to 91.
So you lost 7 kilos. So you lost 7 kilos since New Year's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're only eating one steak a day.
Yeah.
Nothing else. No oil on it,
I-
any vegetables, something.
I do have my cheat days.
Okay.
How crazy
Tell
are the
us,
cheat days?
tell us about your cheat days. And how
Yeah,
often?
cheat
And how,
days.
is it a day? Is it a cheat day or a cheat meal?
It's probably a cheat meal. It's probably a cheat meal, but I've dialed back on those as well.
How often
So
were you having them?
I was having maybe a cheat meal on Friday and Saturday.
Not that bad. And how crazy was this cheat meal? What was it? Like a whole pizza and fucking Oreos and Tim
Uh,
Tams and everything, or just like a
uh,
fucking
s- yeah, definitely some Tim Tam. Used to be a whole pizza, but I've cut pizza out entirely. Yeah, nothing too crazy. Milkshakes, burgers, but I think milkshakes and ice cream, things that have both cream and sugar, make a big difference.
how big's this steak you're having every day as well?
Might be around 300 grams.
Yeah, see, that seems like a massive calorie deficit.
Yeah. Are you going hungry? Are you starving yourself? Because that's a stressor, right?
No, because I have coffee and the coffee has fat. So that kind of satiates my hunger.
As in, you're
What's-
having milk in the
what-
coffee? Is that what you mean?
Yep. Yep.
And how many a day?
Probably have 2, 3 a day.
Still, it sounds like less than 1,000 calories a day, unless we're missing
Yeah.
something here.
Yeah, you're
Like, are
definitely.
you
you're
putting
getting-
oil on the steak or?
No.
Yeah,
Just
that's
salt.
a
Honestly,
fucking
Marcus,
massive deficit.
I definitely think you should take a week or two to track either through MyFitnessPal or another app, or even better, send a picture to Andrew or Mick every single day for 2 weeks, because
Okay.
there's often a huge discrepancy between what people think they eat and what they actually eat. There's often a huge gap, right? And if Andrew didn't ask you about cheat meals, then you probably won't have thought about it, right? So you might be thinking that you eat this much, but you actually eat, this much. So I feel like just whether tracking or even simply taking a picture, because so often, I'm sure Andrew and Mick, you probably have seen with your clients, they say they had 2 servings of rice, they take a picture. I'm like, bro, that's at least 5 servings, right? So there's a huge gap between what you think you eat and what you actually eat, how much protein you think you consume and how much you actually consume. So sending a picture to a trainer every single day for 2 weeks, I believe that'll make all the difference.
Yeah, so just a little side note, it's not directly related to your exact situation, it's on the opposite end, but it's just so you realize something. So I had I can't even remember what division she was in. Anyway, she was going to compete in some physique competition, right? And anyway, so she came to me from another trainer. She wasn't happy with the other trainer, so she came to me and she was adamant on competing in this competition. She didn't have enough time, but I did what I could. Anyway, so what we ended up figuring out, I think we got 2 weeks into it and she wasn't seeing any progress. And I knew her history and where her metabolism was and blah, blah, blah. We went over all of that stuff, but she just wasn't seeing any results. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, she was a bigger girl, like as in bigger, more muscular girl. She used to play rugby. She trained hard. Like I've trained her before, like a long time ago. So I know how hard she trains, like probably the hardest training female I've ever trained in my life. She's strict. When she fucks up, she tells you blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, what the fuck are we missing here? This doesn't make sense. So I went back to the basics. I'm like, okay, in your nutrition. So you're eating this and this, right? She goes, yes. I go, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, eventually I'm like, okay, are you having any coffees? So no. I go, are you putting extra oil onto your meals? And like, you just saw her face drop. Like the most basic thing that we already went over this the previous time I trained her, that so she knows this, but it was just something she didn't think about. And her face dropped. I go, how much oil are you putting on? She goes, I'm not even measuring. I go, what do you mean you're not even measuring? You're getting ready for a competition. Give me a guess. What do you think? She goes, probably 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil per meal. And she was having 5 meals a day. And we worked it out. That's anywhere from 900 to 1500 calories extra. You know what I mean? It was just something she didn't think about. Anyway, so we got rid of that and she started dropping like crazy. So the whole tracking thing, I get it. A lot of people out there would be like, oh, it's so difficult. I can't imagine the time commitment and blah, blah, blah. But that information is absolutely invaluable. The information you're getting it from tracking and knowing what you're eating, the ROI on that in terms of knowing what you're getting for and lack of results and everything now, as opposed to, oh, it could be that, it could be this. I don't know. It's all up in the air. The amount of time I spend tracking per day is honestly less than 2 minutes, right? The only time that I actually spend tracking is when it's a new meal and I've never eaten at this restaurant, or I made a new meal myself, because now I've got to track it again, save that meal. You can save as many meals as you want. So if you're eating a regular meal, which most people eat regular meal, like most people aren't eating something different for every single meal they have, right? Or even if you do, you're going to rotate back and come back to your meals that you've had before at some point. For most people, obviously there's exceptions, right? But you save every single one of those meals. So all it is literally next time you go add food, meals, it's that one, click, bam, done, you just track the meal. It's so quick and easy, it's ridiculous. So in your case, it's the opposite. You're having too little calories. Again, we may be missing something. We haven't asked all the questions yet, but just judging off the information you've given us so far, it's like you're way under eating. Now, real quickly, I'm going to give a real quick and easy explanation of the metabolism and what can actually happen. Now, you have lost a decent amount of weight. You've lost 7 kilos. But if we look at the time frame, so if you're saying since the beginning of the year to now, that's 4 months. So what's that? That's 16 weeks. So if you're in that much of a deficit, you should at minimum be losing 1 kilo per week, minimum. So you should have been losing close to 16 kilos as opposed to 7 kilos. So there's another factor we're missing here. I could be wrong, but this is just initial thought based on the information that we have. This is where my mind's going to. Because it's such an extreme deficit, right? So you normally eat, like, for example, this is your maintenance. You're probably eating, I'm guessing on average, you were eating anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 calories. I'm guessing that's where you were, right? Based on your height, weight, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you went down to, arguably based on the information we have, 500 calories, right? Like that's an extreme deficit. Now this actually has a downside, right? The downside is try not to think, get out of the framework of we're civilized, there's a fucking fridge over there, there's a pantry, there's food everywhere. That's not what we're evolved for. We may be civilized and have all these things available to us now, but our bodies don't function based on having a fridge, having a pantry, blah, blah, blah. Our bodies function based on survival, right? Because we didn't have fridges for only the last 150 years of existence, or roughly around that, right? So up until that point, there was a lot of hunting, blah, 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 back in the day and all that sort of shit. Now, if I'm out and about, I'm hunter-gatherer, I'm going through a period where I can't find any food, blah, 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 obviously my body would want to survive longer than shorter. So if I'm burning 3,000 calories a day to maintain my weight, and all of a sudden I've got no food coming in, it's in my body's best interest to start burning less calories. This is called metabolic adaptation. The reason that happens is you're conserving energy to survive longer, which is 100% awesome. We want that. Trust me, we don't want to be the other way. Like maybe because we live in a fridges and food and blah, 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 we've got access to all that. We would think, oh yeah, it'd be more convenient for me to just burn so many calories and it doesn't slow down. Yeah, cool, but that's not how we work, right? So the way we actually work is we work based on survival. So where am I going with this? If your body is basically saying, okay, I'm eating let's call it 3,000 for the sake of maths. I'm eating 3,000 calories and I'm burning 3,000 calories. I'm maintaining my weight. All of a sudden, I'm down to 500 calories, which means I'm only getting 500 calories, but I'm burning 3,000 calories. Now that's a 2,500 calorie deficit. That's a hell of a deficit, right? So your body's basically saying, okay, I'm starving. I need to learn to survive on 500 calories because that's all I'm getting right now. Now, the rate at metabolic adaptation on how quick you adapt to it is different for everyone. How much body fat do you have to get away with? How much of a calorie deficit is it? How extreme are things? Now, the example would be, let's say we got someone super obese and then like an elite level 6% body fat athlete. This 6% body fat athlete, he's going to adapt very quickly in comparison to the guy that's 50%, right? He's got 50% of leeway. He's got 50% of body fat Like that's going to take ages. He's going to live for so long until he gets to the point where he's skin and bones. Whereas opposed to the athlete, 6%, he's got like, if he's burning 3,000 calories and he's only eating 500, he's got a couple weeks. If that rate just kept up and there was no survival mechanism, no metabolic adaptation, he'd drop dead in a few weeks. He wouldn't last very long whatsoever. But if we put him on that extreme deficit, he will adapt very quickly because he's going to be closest to extreme survival. So again, I don't have all the information, but judging on all the information that you have given me, I'm going to assume that there is some element of metabolic adaptation there. Now, again, you have lost 7 kilos, which is good, but it should have been closer to 16 kilos, right? So that's where my head's at with it all. Does that make sense how I explained it?
Gotcha. Yep. That's really insightful. Yeah, it could be that I'm taking it a bit too extreme and my metabolism might have slowed down. But
Marcus,
cool question.
it's what we call yo-yo dieting. I think because as Marcus, as Andrew mentioned, you started here. You set the bar here. Okay, so let's say your BMR is what 500, and then you go out and how often are you having these cheat meals? Once or twice a week, you said?
Yeah, once first week.
So once your body adapts to here, if you're going to go over your calories here, what's going to happen? You're going to put on weight. You're going to go back down. You know what I'm saying? You're going up and you're just going up and down.
Okay.
You just got to, I suggest you reset your hunger hormones, your ghrelin and your leptin by eating crappy food, by eating good food. And let me ask you, how's your sleep?
Sleep is just fine. Good, solid.
Yeah?
6 hours a day.
Okay. Do you wake up during the night?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I usually ask clients, "Oh, yeah, I sleep great. Yeah, I wake up 5 times to go pee." No, you're not fucking sleeping. Okay. So you 6.5 hours a night, unbroken, which is great.
Just real quickly, it's not directly related to you, but some people may get what I said a little bit, or how can I say? They would use the information that I have and they would mess something up. So I'm going to clarify something. Now, how we were saying the 3,000 and the 500 calories. Something else I do when I have new clients on is I want to know where they are. Like, what are you actually consuming right now? Because if I just calculate where someone's calories should be, so let's just say, oh, he's 6 foot, he's 120 kilos, he's 30% body fat. Oh yeah, put him on 2,500 calories, right? What if that guy came to me and he was doing what you're doing? And what if his metabolism was 500 now? This is what Mick was saying. If I immediately put him onto 2,500, if you've adapted to 500, you're now in a 2,000 calorie surplus and you're going to be gaining fat, right? So this is why it's always very important to find out where are you right now? What are you eating right now? Again, real quickly, what I was saying before, the tracking calories takes 2 minutes a day. If you're not willing to put in 2 minutes a day, you don't deserve to get the results. Like it's 2 minutes a day for absolutely know where I am and absolutely know what's happening, as opposed to guesswork and hopes and dreams and praying and wishing and blah, blah, blah. So like that 2 minutes a day is definitely worth the ROI. It's a crazy fucking deal that you're getting there. So my first thing would be track your food, save your meals, see where everything's at, and then you'll be able to have a better judgment call of what's really going on. Because again, like another little question would be, is it your own coffee or is it a store-bought coffee? Because if it's your own coffee, you're just going to put a dash of milk. If it's a store-bought coffee, they're going to fucking Starbucks and put a bit of this and a bit of sugar and all the other stuff that we're not telling you because it tastes so fucking great, or whatever else it may be. But I'm pretty sure we can all agree that store-bought coffee is going to have a lot more calories as opposed to the little dash of milk that we put at home. So there are a few more factors, but regardless, unless we've missed something, it does sound very low. I don't have another explanation as opposed to metabolic adaptation. The only other thing that I could give you is, so Mick mentioned it in a different way, like the sleep, the stress and all of that. When I say gut health, me saying gut health means everything. Like I don't just talk gut because gut is connected, gut to brain axis, blah, 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 blah. So there could be a gut issue present as well. That could be what's happening. But yeah, I would say we need more information before we could tell you 100%. Regardless, look, like we said, 7 kilos lost is still good. It's just strange that 16 weeks, you're losing less than half a kilo per week on arguably 500 calories a day. Like it seems like we're missing something somewhere. But yeah, I think the best thing to do to 100% know how to get you the results that you want is first off, start tracking. I normally say 3 days, track 3 days worth of food. If you're having regular cheat days, just keep tracking so we can see the cheat days as well. I don't know how crazy you go with your cheat days, but I remember myself back in the day, like I tracked them and man, I would be like, oh, it's like 2,500 calorie day, 2,500 calorie day. Cheat day comes around 5,000, 6,000. And then you all of a sudden you average that out over the week, and I'm just back at baseline calories on my weekly average, so it doesn't really mean anything.
Okay.
So that could be another thing. Like if you're not tracking the calories on the cheat days, like, well, how crazy are these cheat days? So yeah, that could be a big factor too. Apart from that, apart from gut health, metabolic adaptation, missing something with the calories, or the cheat day just being exponentially bigger and raising the weekly average, there's not really anything else I can think of off the top of my head. How about you, Mick and Daniel? Is there anything else you can think? Again, gut health is including sleep, stress, blah, 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 blah. Is there anything else that you think it could be?
The only other thing I could think of is to also take progress pictures, because maybe you're also gaining muscle, because you said you're going to the gym, right? So it might not be 7 kilos of fat, it might be 10 kilos of fat and 3 kilograms of muscles, right? So it could be that. So I would say take progress pictures as well. That could help. Ideally, you have a scale that measures fat and muscle as well. But in terms of what you're doing, I feel like Nick and Mick, like Andrew and Mick, just hit everything. I can't think of anything else.
I just, to be honest, Marcus, and this is for anyone else that's watching that's in your same shoes, because there are a lot of guys in your same shoes, Marcus. Look, I'd say right now your body is not, you're not ready to burn. You're not in the fat, body's not ready because your system is broken, pretty much. What else did you do? Just go back to the drawing boards, go back to basics. I'd say feed your body a little bit more. Maybe I wouldn't say go back to 3,000. I'd say just add in another meal. Have 2 meals per day right now. And do training exercise where aerobic output, where you're going to create more energy. You're going to create more mitochondria. What's mitochondria? That's the powerhouse of the cell. So more mitochondria, more energy in your body, right? So your body's going to partition the nutrients you eat properly. So they're going to get to your muscle cells rather than going into your fat cells. So do you remember when I had you doing that aerobic, the 60 minutes of the slow, steady cardio?
Oh yeah, those were intense.
That's gonna create mitochondria. That's gonna create more energy. That's gonna relax your body and de-stress your body and set you up again. So go back to doing that. Eat more calories. Do a little bit more relaxation. I think you overworked a little bit. You said you're hella busy with work. Are you on your computer or on your screen before you go to bed?
I am. Yeah, I'm basically on my computer all day long, 12 hours a day, 13 hours a day.
Okay, then you're not sleeping, man. Sorry if you think you're sleeping. You're not. If you're looking at light or blue light before bed, you're not sleeping, man. 2 hours before bed. I know you're busy. 2 hours before bed, or at least an hour. Do some sort of relaxation. Do some deep breathing. Slow your breathing down. Get into that rhythm. Do some cardio. Eat more calories. Go back to basics. Then start the process again. Track your calories, like Andrew said. Go back to the start and then start the process again.
That's really good stuff.
Andrew is trying to fix his mic. To Mick's point, I would say maybe even track your sleep, right? There's like things like whoop and things like that. As Mick said, you might think you're getting high quality sleep, but your sleep might be shitty, right?
Yeah.
So tracking that might be helpful as well. Because again, people think they this level, but they might actually be this level.
Gotcha.
So with what actually happens, so like the blue light thing, I just want to explain to people that are listening, you too, Marcus, because the reason I know this so is because I've been there, done that. So I did the same thing when I was younger. So what actually happens when you're too stimulated or exposed to blue light before you go to bed? You're messing with neurotransmitters and you're messing with hormones. So the main one, so what's happening with the blue light side of things is we perceive blue light as in the light that comes on a normal screen, like a laptop, a TV, a phone, or whatever. We perceive that the same way as we perceive sunlight. So right now, because there's sunlight coming in through the window and there's blue light on the screen or whatever, my brain is, okay, I can see sunlight, let's stop the production of melatonin or blunt it or whatever it may be, right? Which means we're going to be staying awake. As soon as it starts to get sunset to nighttime, we start releasing melatonin. The problem is, if we're on that laptop at nighttime, we may know, oh yes, I have a clock, I'm advanced, that's 10 p.m. Yeah, but remember, it doesn't matter the technology, the fridge, all this sort of stuff. How we operate is we perceive that the same way as we perceive sunlight. So our brain is saying, don't produce your main sleep hormone, melatonin, which is literally, it's messing with your sleep big time. The second thing, so that's just one thing. You could put a blue light filter on. If you have a PC, get f.lux. If you have a Mac, there's a setting, night mode or whatever it is. Now you can get that, but you can still mess up on another avenue. And the other avenue is dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter. So there's 122 neurotransmitters, 4 main ones: dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, and GABA. When you're doing a stimulating activity, you're producing dopamine. when you're trying to sleep, rest and relax, you want to produce GABA. They're two ends of the spectrum. If you're producing too much dopamine, you're most likely not producing much GABA. If you're in a state where you can produce GABA, you're not going to be producing much dopamine, right? So if you're doing something mentally stimulating, you're producing dopamine, which means you're not producing GABA, which means it's going to be harder to fall asleep properly at night. So ideally, like Mick was saying, 1 hour minimum, 2 hours before bed, there should be no blue light, and you shouldn't be doing anything too mentally stimulating. If you need to watch a movie before bed, make it a boring fucking thing or something like that, right? Or meditation music or something. But if you're watching John Wick and you're into it, and then you try and go to bed right after watching John Wick kill motherfuckers left center, you're not sleeping properly, right? Your dopamine's, I want to do jujitsu now. I want to get fucking guns. I want to go on the range. Fuck, let's do all this shit. So you're in a different sort of state of mind. Whatever it may be, you got to find out what works for you. You could do meditation. You could put on meditation music. You could read a book. You could watch something boring on YouTube or whatever it may be. But the takeaway is you've got to get rid of blue light. Most devices in this day and age, they have a setting for it. And if you have a PC, you can just download it. If you have Android, you can just download it. And you got to stop doing something too mentally stimulating. So that's basically the takeaway on the main things and how you can fix sleep from a routine standpoint.
Yeah, and get that morning sunlight too, Marcus. Just as much as you can before 11 a.m. if you can. That's gonna improve your sleep. And do you have any biographies at home?
Biographies?
Yeah, a book, like any biographies. Like I said, as Andrew mentioned, if you're going to read a book that's going to stimulate your mind, no. They recommend reading biographies before bed. I read the Michael Jordan biography. I used to do that before I used to go to sleep, and 2 pages in, I'm out of a great sleep. So I'd say maybe get yourself a biography, and that's definitely going to help you. It's going to improve your sleep, no doubt about it. And as we mentioned, 2 hours before bed, do some deep breathing, man. Do some meditation. That'll be a game changer for you, because ideally, just to cut, I'd say the big picture, Marcus, and anyone else that's in your shoes, you're stressed. Fix your stress. The best modalities against stress: sleep, nutrition, meditation, breath work, walking. Because you guys are on constantly go, do more. That's just the way. But take a backward step a little bit and do some modalities that are going to put your body in that sort of state where you're able to burn fat, because you're not in that state right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks, guys. That was a lot of good tips. I think I have a few different possible culprits that I could work on. One of them being probably maybe too much cortisol. As you guys know, cortisol is the hormone that specifically stores fat around your waist.
Absolutely.
So it could be that. And I think between the three of you, you also have another very good theory, and that's that maybe going too much of a calorie deficit lowers the metabolism, and then you have your 1 or 2 cheat days a week. And on those 2 days, your body is storing a ton of fat from those 2 cheat meals. And then you're not really burning it as it averages out throughout the week.
If you can, Marcus, maybe try and hack your brain to do a cheat meal. Make it a healthy meal. Add some high quality protein. Add some rice in there. Add some carbohydrates. It's high quality vegetables and fruits.
Okay.
Because like I said, if you're stressed, the most important thing for you now is nutrition, man. You got to get your nutrition up. Okay. Quality nutrition too.
So I think you guys touched on so many different things, and this is one reason why it's so hard to get a 6-pack, because you got to do so many different things right. You got to sleep right. You got to get the right nutrition. You got to track your calories. You got to, et cetera, et cetera. So many things you can do right.
If it was easy, everyone would have a 6-pack, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why it's so valued, because it is very difficult to achieve. For you, Daniel, is it essential to have a calorie deficit in order to get that 6-pack? You train folks who you help them lose 30 pounds without going to the gym. I would imagine that you're probably putting them in a caloric deficit, so you might know a little bit about that. But do you have to be in a caloric deficit in order to build that 6-pack?
100%. It's physics. It's the only way. You can't out-compete biology, right? This doesn't apply just to humans. It applies to all mammals, right? If you consume more calories than you burn, you will gain weight. If you burn more calories than you consume, you will lose weight, right? There's some people who think that they're special, they're a snowflake, but this applies to 100% of people. Right now, keto, intermittent fasting, vegan, all those diets, might work phenomenally for one person, but not as good for another person. But the principle that you have to burn more calories than you consume, that applies to everyone. Now, again, there's many ways to go about it. You can eat once a day, you can eat 5 times a day. So try different things out, see what is more sustainable for you, what you can do in the long term. Because I'm guessing, Marcus, the goal is not to have a six pack for an Instagram picture. The goal is to maintain it like Andrew does for ever, 365 days out of it. It's definitely possible if it is a part of you, if it's who you are. And I don't know about Andrew and Mick, but I feel like it's true for them as well. Whenever things are difficult, I'm like, yeah, nobody else is doing this. Nobody's as tough as me. Other people are gonna give up. Take pride in that. Have a high ego. Be like, yeah, it's difficult. This is gonna make it worth it. Not, oh, it's difficult. I'm gonna give up.
That's a good point, Daniel. Why do most people hate training? Because they suck at it. We sucked at first. You suck at anything worth doing, you're gonna suck at it. And the way to do it is by doing it. So I once sucked at training. I couldn't squat. I couldn't bench press. I hated it. But hey, I did it. I got better. And now, hey, it's second nature to me. So you bring up a good point there, Daniel.
Yeah, you also brought up a good point about it's about who you are. So to maintain that six pack long term, you got to kind of change who you are at your core, how you think, how you eat, how you sleep, how you operate. That's actually a very good point.
And Marcus,
Okay,
and just
so
for your information, sorry, Marcus, for your information, if you add another meal, maybe you're still in a caloric deficit, man. So don't stress too much.
okay. Okay, awesome. Okay, so if it's not possible to get a six pack without a caloric deficit, then it's absolutely essential, as you pointed out earlier, Andrew, to track your calories. Because how are you going to know that you're in a caloric deficit if you're not tracking,
You
right?
can do it in other methods. You don't have to track to get results. It's just the most accurate and efficient way to do it. For example, if you're eating pack of Tim Tams, cheeseburgers, McDonald's, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden you go chicken breast and broccoli, brown rice, and all of that stuff, you're obviously going to be in a calorie deficit anyway, just because the other way, if you're eating that type of stuff like 3-4 times a day, arguably you're on 4,000+ calories. Then you go down to chicken broccoli, you're going to be on a lot less. It's a lot less dense in terms of calories. So you don't have to do a calorie deficit. Yeah, sorry, you don't have to track your calories, but it's way more accurate and you know exactly what's happening as opposed to I'm eating healthy, because I can argue that my favorite example for the eating healthy thing, and I've done this, right? So I used to live in Sydney, and I was like, there was a few Lebanese sweets places around where I was, right? And they have all about this. They got those salted almonds or whatever they are. Like the way they roasted salted almonds. I'm like, oh, well, this is me like 10, 15 years ago. I'm like, oh, it's almonds. They're healthy. Don't worry about it. Next thing you know, I've eaten this jar full of almonds, and I've probably arguably had about 2,000 calories, but it's healthy, right? But they're so dense. So it's a very bad frame to be in. Oh, it's healthy food. It's unhealthy food. You should be in the frame of, in terms of weight loss, you should be in the frame of what's calorie dense, what's not calorie dense, where are my calories, blah, blah, blah. Another way you could do it would be intermittent fasting. If you're eating less meals a day, you're eating less calories. That's another way to do it. But again, all of these different methods don't take into account my maintenance is here. Where am I? Am I over maintenance? Am I under maintenance? It doesn't account for that. It's like we're assuming it is, but there are certain factors. Let's do intermittent fasting, and I have one massive 4,000 calorie meal. Then intermittent fasting doesn't mean anything. So obviously, look, I know not everyone's going to do that. For the average person, it is going to work anyway. But this is the other problem. That metabolic adaptation thing that I've said before, it can come into play depending what you're doing. Like you don't know if you're messing it up because you're not tracking, so you don't know. You could be, you could not be, you can get away with it, you might not get away with it. We don't know that. So if you're all of a sudden you're doing, okay, exactly what you're doing right now, Marcus, I'm only eating one meal a day. In theory, yeah, you're in a 2,500 calorie deficit. I should be losing a ton of weight, blah, blah, blah. But when you actually extrapolate all those points that we said before, you could be literally in metabolic adaptation. Your body's just, I need to survive right now. So it just holds on to everything. Obviously, there's the gut health, there's the sleep factors, there's all these other things. Now, assuming we have a perfectly healthy person and there's no sleep problems, no stress problems, none of that stuff, well, then the main factor is, yes, you need to be in a calorie deficit. Now, I want to touch on that a little bit more because I know that my frame of mind on this was a little bit wrong years ago when I first started out. I didn't understand the difference between a nutritional calorie deficit and an exercise-based calorie deficit, or a combination of the both. Now, me personally, so I'm cutting at the moment. I much prefer to make an exercise-based calorie deficit. Now, what I mean by that, again, for the sake of maths, my maintenance is 3,000 calories. So 3,000 calories a day, I maintain my weight. Now, I have two options. I can either restrict my nutrition to the point of, let's say I restrict 500 calories. So now I'm consuming 2,500 calories. I'm in a 500 calorie deficit per day. That's one way. The other way is I keep eating 3,000 calories, but I add in extra cardio. Let's say I add 500 calories worth of cardio a day. Now my output is 3,500 calories. I'm consuming 3,000. It's still a 500 calorie deficit, either way you look at it. The advantage of the way I like to do it, so I like to add in extra activity to make my deficit. The advantage of that is now I'm not restricting food, therefore restricting nutrients. So that's one thing. The other thing, when you do it that way, is now I'm not mentally affected by the lack of food. I'm still consuming the same amount of food. Now, for me, those two are very important. I hate feeling restricted with amount of food. And I've literally done it. I've done it both ways. I've done the 2,500 calories, no cardio. I've done 3,000 calories with cardio. I feel less energy when I consume less calories. Whereas if I consume my normal calories and just do extra cardio, I still feel good energy. So I'm arguably getting close to 8% now. I'm probably 9 right now, getting down. And I've been dieting for at least 2 months, and my energy is not affected at all. So I still feel good, right? But I'm doing it my way. Now, I don't know the best to the science I can come up with to why I feel better this way is because I'm mentally not affected and I still have the same amount of nutrients. My nutrients aren't affected. So I've still got that fuel for all the other processes. We could argue you need fats for your hormones and carbs, you need a certain amount of carbs for your brain health and blah, 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 blah. So all things being considered, I still have the building blocks my way. And it's mainly just a calorie energy sort of thing output wise. So I'm not restricting the input. So hopefully that makes sense. And guys, I'm sure Mick and Daniel, you'll have something to say about that as well. But does this make sense? What do you guys prefer? Do you rather do a calorie deficit, or would you rather increase the exercise to create that calorie deficit?
Personally, I like to increase the activity, like you said. Even as you mentioned in the beginning, Andrew, NEAT, right? That's a very underrated hack. You don't know what NEAT stands for. That's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's pretty much just that's even if it's just fiddling at your desk, upping your steps. Yeah, really. That's honestly, it's a very underrated hack to actually lose fat. So I personally do, but like I said, each to their own. Andrew might, Marcus might want to cut down his calories because it's convenient for his lifestyle. He's a busy man. He doesn't want to keep thinking about food. So yeah, I personally like to increase my activity. Others like to increase their food intake. So
Yeah, the same here for myself. I personally would like to increase my activity just because, just like you, Andrew, I hate restricting myself. And as many people have found that if they restrict themselves 6 days out of the week, on the seventh day doing their treat meal, they might go overboard and that ruins everything. Right. So for myself, I also like to increase the activity. However, I would say for most other people, it might be beneficial to decrease the amount of calories they consume just because most people are extremely busy or they believe they're extremely busy and they are not going to commit to another 30 minutes or an hour of working out. They can barely be consistent as it is. So I would say it does take less effort to eat a couple less bites than to burn an extra 500 calories for cardio. So for the average person who can't even remain consistent doing basic things, I would say it's probably better to decrease nutrition, in my opinion.
Makes perfect sense. So Andrew, you introduced the idea of, you said exercise caloric deficit versus nutritional caloric deficit. Then in order to measure your exercise caloric deficit, you also have to track how many calories you're burning.
So I'm not super strict. I used to be, like, if I was competing, yeah, I would exactly do that. So I've got this sheet that I actually will share with you as well, Marcus. It's like it's a biofeedback sheet, right? So you track your calories, you track your weight, energy, high, medium, low, motivation, high, medium, low, libido, high, medium, low, because it gives you that data will give you very good feedback on if you're actually in metabolic adaptation. Because so for example, if I'm looking at this sheet, and we're starting off on day one, I think you said you were 98 kilos, and we're like, oh, energy's good, libido's good, everything's good, blah, blah, blah. And then now April, energy's bad, libido's like 0. It's okay. That information right there is starting to look like that's metabolic adaptation because it shouldn't be like that, right? then we can start to look at all the other factors and everything else as well. But to answer your question, if I was trying to be super strict for a competition, then yeah, I would be tracking. I would have an activity tracker on. I'd be like, okay, I did 10,000 steps today. Write that shit down. What am I aiming for? I'll probably plan that at another point as well. How much cardio am I doing per week? Blah, blah, blah. So if I was doing it that way, I would have to progress the deficit via exercise. Or again, I'm just doing it now because this is easy for me at this point. Like I'm just doing extra activity. It's fine. I'm doing extra boxing. I'm happy to do all this stuff. So I'm not really being super strict about the tracking. I just track my food right now, but I know how much activity I'm doing. So if I was doing it for a competition, purely from an exercise standpoint, which I wouldn't do, but just to answer your question, I'll explain it. For example, I'll be like, okay, I'm eating 3,000 calories now. I'm doing like 3,000 steps a day. I sit at home all day. I don't do anything. And I train 4 days a week. Okay, write that down. Now we know where we're at. Now I continue to consume those same calories. And my first step might be, I'm going to up my steps to 10,000 calories. Sorry, 10,000 steps. And that's it. Keep the same 4 days a week training. All I did was add 10,000 steps. But going from 3,000 to 10,000 steps is a decent amount of extra calories per day. That's probably, for my size, about 400 extra calories a day. So that's good, right? See how things go. How do I respond? 1, 2 weeks, then readjust. It might be, okay, responding good there. I want to start adding in cardio now. So now it's the 10,000 steps plus 3 30-minute sessions of cardio per week. See how things go, then go from there. In terms of the comp prep side of things, so if you look at like competition preparation from bodybuilding, bikini and all that, the saying that I subscribe to is you don't want to play all your cards at once, right? Because then where do you go from there? So if it's like, for example, an extreme example would be something like what you've done right now, Marcus. It's okay, you were having 3,000 calories, you're down to 500, where do you go from here? What do we do next? So if we use my old school, like the first bodybuilding competition I did was like 13 years ago. So my knowledge definitely wasn't then what it is now. But I still got in comp ready condition. The way that I did it back then, going back to that metabolism example, was, for example, I was 3,000 calories. I went down to 2.5, got the results, stopped seeing results, went down to 2,000, got the results, stopped seeing results, went down to 1,500, felt like absolute dog shit, got on stage, looked great, everything was good. So I still got in competition ready condition. But I was on 1,500 calories. So I can't imagine how you're feeling on 500 calories, Marcus. So I felt freaking horrible. The second time that I did my competition, which was, I was 21 then, I think it was like 27, my second competition. The second time I did it, the lowest my calories went during the entire prep. So I got on stage on 2,800 calories, which is comfortable as fuck. I felt fine. Obviously, I was a little bit under what I normally am because I'm extremely ripped, but like I was nowhere near as wrecked as what I was as opposed to 1,500 calories. But I was doing a lot more cardio. So the way that I did my second comp was, so it was like 5, 6 days weights, whatever it might have been. And then I built myself up over time. I was doing a 30-minute cardio session after my weight session. And then I was doing another 45-minute cardio session in a separate session. So quite a lot of activity, but I built myself up to that. So I was like, I had the extra calories, so I felt good from that. I was able to fuel everything. I was just doing a lot of extra activity. Normally, for most people, if they're able to, I'd say a combination of both would be best. Like a small deficit, increase your activity. Like that would be my go-to. If you're on 3,000 calories, you drop it down to 27, 26, but then do some extra cardio or some extra steps. But I think the best thing to do, what you were mentioning before, Marcus, is track, 100% track. Everyone's got their own method to do it. I personally use an Excel spreadsheet. It's weight. So I've got all your standard stuff that most people do over here. So it's like your weight, your calories, your macros, blah, blah, blah. That's one section. On the other section, oh, sorry, you also have your steps and your cardio on there. Then the other section, I have the biofeedback. So, how's my motivation? How's my stress? How's my sleep? How many times am I going to the bathroom? How's my libido? Blah, blah, blah. Any extra notes, whatever. And now everything that I've said here seems like a lot. So if you didn't know me and all of and you didn't know my systems and whatever, and you just heard what I said right now, you'd be like, oh my God, it's going to take me all day and all night and I can't do it. It's all too much. You know how long that takes me to fill out? Less than 5 minutes a day. And 5 minutes would be probably me being on my phone while I'm doing it, taking my time. Like if I just filled out all the data on both things, on MyFitnessPal and that spreadsheet, we're talking like probably 3 minutes, if I'm being honest, 3 minutes a day. So it sounds like a lot, but if you actually look at it, it's okay, how do I actually do the biofeedback? I get my mouse, click, low, medium, high, medium, click, low, medium, high, medium. There's 6 of them things. How long is that going to take? A minute? And then like Daniel, Mick, you know very well how long it takes to track save meals on your phone. Save meal takes fuck all. It's like literally click, add food, meals, which one, that one, click, done. It's that quick. So 100% recommend tracking because you've got data. Now, like it's now I know, as opposed to, oh, I don't have abs. I don't know. Is it this? Is it that? It's all up in the air. It's all this magical, hard to achieve thing that we just can't put any data on. But if you have that data, if you're like, okay, for example, 88 kilos today, 88.1 tomorrow, 88.3, 87.9, blah, blah, whatever. Now we got a weekly average. Okay, what's the next weekly average? Oh, I've lost 500 grams. Fucking beautiful. Let's go. Let's keep, don't change a thing. Oh, it's been 2 weeks and nothing's changed. Okay, I've got a bit of, now it seems like I need to make a change. Let me just look at the previous history, what's happened, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it seems like I need to make a change. I've lost too many kilos. I've got to make a change right now. I've been in a deficit for too long. Okay, sweet. We've got data. What's happened before? What's my weight? What's the calories? Is it the calories? Blah, blah, blah. Another example might be, okay, I haven't lost weight. What have my calories been in? Oh, yeah, that cheat day. Oh, now we know. There's no confusion as about it. It's okay. We know I haven't lost calories. I haven't lost weight because my calories were too high on that day. Now it's like 100% we know. There's no more guesswork. There's nothing else there. So I think that for most people to get results, I don't think 5 minutes is too much to ask for guaranteed results. I think it's a very good deal. So I think it's just like a knowledge and motivation thing for that. So obviously, yes, you need the knowledge and motivation for all the other factors and everything, but then you also need to know how to use that tracking document. You need to know how to track, and you actually have to be in routine and actually track and blah, blah, blah. So I think by far that is the best way to get it done. If you want an even better way, get a trainer. Obviously, the coach is going to help you fast track through all these. In saying that though, like Mick and Daniel, I'm sure you guys have your own method of tracking your client's progress. It's not as hard as people make it out to be. The app does all the work for you. This is the thing. So many people think that tracking calories is hard. It's easy as fuck. It's okay. Tell me who can do this. Give me a 5-year-old. I can teach a 5-year-old to do this. It's so simple, right? Okay. We want 200 grams of raw chicken breast. Okay. 5-year-old, grab that chicken, put it in that scale. What does it say? Oh, it's 250. So what does that mean, 5-year-old? That means we need less chicken. Okay. So let's chop a bit of chicken off. Let's weigh it again. Oh, it's 200. Beautiful. Cook the chicken. Done. Track that 200 grams in the thing. Now we know what we're eating. It's so simple. It's just, I think for the majority of people out there, most people, it's just an excuse. It's just another excuse. Oh, I'm no good with the phone. Oh, I don't know how to use the app. Oh, it's too much work. Or woe is me. Blah, blah, blah. So
lazy.
At the end of the day, yeah, it's laziness, right? Oh, I don't have time. That's my favorite one. I don't have time. Oh, but you got 3 hours every night to watch Netflix, but you don't have time. Priorities and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, 100%. Tracking is the best way to do it. Track your input. If you really want to, if you're going down the calorie output method, then yes, in one form or another, track your output. I would keep the tracking output very simple. You don't have to look. If you're more advanced, you want to get the polar heart strap and blah blah blah. That's cool. You don't need to go that far. All I would do would literally just be, okay, what am I consuming? I'm consuming 3,000 calories. Where are my steps? Where is my cardio? I'm doing 5,000 steps and I'm doing 2 sessions a week of 30 minutes cardio. That's all you need to do. Just most people carry their phone around, and most people have smartwatches these days, so that tracks your steps for you. That's that done. All you need to do is just write down what it tells you to do. And then in terms of the cardio, just keep track of what you're doing. I'm doing 2 days, 30 minutes a week. That's it. You don't have to get super specific with a calorie tracker and all that. You can judge it based off that. If you want to be specific, the best way to do it is if you're doing low intensity cardio would be, okay, I'm doing 2 sessions a week at 30 minutes at 130 beats per minute. That's all you need to do. Just maintain that heart rate if you're doing low intensity cardio and just track it. Because now if you want to progress, you can either make the cardio a bit more intense, which you would track that by your beats per minute, or you could just increase the amount of time you're doing it. And again, this is just low intensity cardio. We're not talking about high intensity, different story. Average person, high intensity interval training is probably too quick for your average person that's just starting out. Just stick to the low intensity stuff. So no, I went on a long way for your answer, but I think I've covered more bases. And I like doing that because a lot of the time you give an answer, like we were saying with that calorie thing, where your calories are. If all we knew was 3,500 and you're like, oh, I got to eat more food, I'll go straight back to 3,000. Now you're just putting on body fat. So I'd rather give a little bit more of a detailed, so you know all the factors required for you to get those results.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Thanks, Andrew. So
And
I think
Marcus, one more thing. Sorry. And it's when you're tracking, it's only a short-term thing. Marcus, anyone else out there doesn't like to track. It's because you're gonna get used to it. After maybe a week or two, you're gonna know. Okay, you're gonna get a gauge. Okay, this is how much 200 grams. This is how much that is. This is how much that is. So it's a temporary thing because your body's smart. It knows that way. If you do it for the first 2 weeks, okay, then you're gonna know. Okay, that's how much. That's 200 grams, etc., etc.
That's good to know. So it's not something that you need to do for the rest of your life,
No, for sure.
potentially. Okay, cool. So I think we covered pretty much all the bases in terms of losing fat around your waist. Key takeaways from me is, one, you have to be in a caloric deficit, but you need to be in an exercise caloric deficit. And in the business world, we say what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. You want to manage your six pack and be in control of it, you have to measure it. So that makes very good sense to me now that I think about that a little bit more. So I definitely will be giving MyFitnessPal a try, because that might help me diagnose where I'm going wrong. What am I? Is it my cheat day? What is it? So really good stuff, guys. Really good stuff. But so that's in terms of losing the belly fat. Now, if I got down to 10% body fat, I wouldn't just have six packs waiting for me. They wouldn't just be ready. Like, I still got to develop those muscles. Is that right?
To a degree. They don't have to be as developed as what a lot of people think. Like, for example, I'm sure we've all seen those super, super skinny dudes. You take their shirt off, it's like they have an outline of a six pack, even though like it's not protruding as much as, say, Ronnie Coleman's six packs are protruding. So look, obviously it does play a factor, but the main factor is, because look, you can get Ronnie Coleman. We're using an extreme example, Ronnie Coleman, right? Get Ronnie Coleman at 10%. You probably still see an outline of a six pack because they're so fucking big, right? Like the muscle is so big. But it's what look do you want? Do you just want to be able to see the outline of it, but everything else is like fucking super fat? Or do you actually want everything to be super lean? So at the end of the day, it's like saying, do you have an abdominal muscle or do you not have an abdominal muscle? If you cut down enough, you're going to see abs, right? It's just, obviously, if they're more developed, they're going to look a bit better. So yeah, you definitely do need to train them a little bit. But yeah, it's mainly losing the body fat for most people.
Yeah, definitely using the body fat. Like, you do have a six pack somewhere down there. You got a six pack. It's just covered. That's all it is. Just think of it that way.
Gotcha.
Look, there are.
Now I see why you guys.
There certainly is some exercises you can to enhance it. Like your hanging leg raises, your planks, your Russian twists, etc. But like I said, they're already there. You just got to just shed the fat around your stomach. And you're gonna
now I understand why you guys spend so much time covering all these different bases, because there's so many different factors involved in losing that fat. And losing that fat, as you guys just explained, it is the key part of getting that six pack. So that's actually really good to know.
So I just remembered. I know. Go ahead, Daniel.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, I believe the difference between having a person that has a really strong core, like really strong abs, he might have very visible six pack at like 15%, and somebody who has really weak abs, it's only visible at 10%, right? No matter how strong your abs are, if you have 30% body fat, you won't see them, right? And no matter how weak your abs are, if you have 6% body fat, you'll see something, right? So strengthening your abs just allows you to basically have visible six pack at a higher body fat percentage, right? As long as it's low enough. And if it is the same body fat percentage, it will be a lot more visible. So you definitely need to get to a certain degree and then strengthen your abs.
So something
Daniel,
that go ahead, Marcus.
I was just going to ask you the follow-up question. What percent body fat can you typically see the abdominals for the typical person?
4% or less.
Yeah.
10%?
Maximum 12%. 12% maximum. Yeah, nice. Every male, like no matter what you are, or you want a six pack or not, should be striving for 12% body fat or under.
Okay.
It depends on the distribution of fat as well, because everyone stores it differently. So that's actually what I was gonna bring up. And Mick, I know that you would know this because you've done some of the Poliquin stuff, right? Biosignature and all that.
Biosignature, yeah.
So this is what I wanted to mention as well. So hormones have an influence on where we store our body fat. Now, all of the Poliquin theory and biosignature is not 100% proven, but the one that is proven is basically on the topic that we're talking about right now. There's studies on this, that the higher your cortisol levels, the more likely you're going to be storing body fat on your stomach, right? So this is what Mick was talking about earlier. This is another factor on how stress can affect your ability to have a six pack. You could say, again, using this study as an example of what it could look like, you could literally be as lean as me, upper body, but if you're super stressed out, whatever problems are going on, you won't be lean here. So it's a targeted sort of where is your body fat kind of thing. So yeah, another thing to take into account. So yeah, if your stress level is through the roof and you've got everything else, again, it's not just where the stress is going to be stored. Obviously, there's other factors that Mick mentioned as well, your ability to free up fat and blah, 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 that come from stress. But you're literally affecting where your body's storing fat as well.
That's just pretty much 90%, 9 times out of 10, what people are failing. It's just stress, man. It's the root of all evil in terms of the health and fitness game. It's very underrated and it's not talked about much in the industry because I don't know, maybe it's not sexy, but stress management plays a massive part when it comes to your health and fitness and your body composition. And if you, like you said, if you're constantly firing stress responses in your brain like norepinephrine, you're going to be a sympathetic disaster. It's just not going to work. If you want to gain muscle, yeah, actually, funnily enough, when I was in my training and I was constantly stressed, constantly firing stress responses, I actually shrunk. I was catabolic because your sympathetic nervous system is catabolic. Your parasympathetic nervous system is rest, digest, recover, heal. The sympathetic is the complete opposite. So just stress management, yoga, chill out, go for a walk, meditate, breathe. These things are absolute must for everybody, not just old people, everybody.
Very good point, Mick. And just for your average person, so they can better understand what you're saying, so like the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So, you got rest, digest, and the opposite of that is fight or flight. Now, this is the thing. So in this day and age, we have a lot more stress than what our ancestors did back in the day. Absolutely. And the example that I always use is, okay, 3,000 years ago, let's just say 3,000 years ago, got wife, kids, whatever's happening back then. Where's the stress for your average person? So let's just say I got my own little house, I got my own property, I got my own land, no one bothers me. Where's the stress? I might see a wild animal every now and then. Maybe a bear comes on my property. What's that, once a month? So I got to go and defend myself, to kill the bear with a spear or whatever it may be. This is just an example. That's the stress, and then that's done. And then I don't have that level of stress for another month or so, right? Now, what people don't understand is it's the same system, same hormones, same everything that gets released when you're stressed from work. If I'm stressed from work, it's the same system, but I may not be turning it on as much as a bear right there. Let's say arguably a bear in 50 meters, that's 100% fight or flight stress. That's life or death shit right there. I'm either going to die, I'm going to get away. I ain't fighting that fucking thing unless I got guns or whatever. So it's fight or flight, right? Now, it's the same system, but it's a prolonged exposure. So if I have a boss, okay, maybe my boss and the deadline and XYZ and blah, blah, blah is 10% of my fight or flight response is being released, but that's an all day, every day, week in, week out response. It's just constantly, right? So you see the difference. It's like, okay, it's not as much, but that's non-stop. Whereas back in the day, it was like, yep, and we're done for a month, and then yep, and we're done for a month. You know what I mean? So it's a significant difference in terms of the amount of stress that we're exposed to, right? It's just, okay, yeah, it's 10% ongoing as opposed to 100% once a month. And that can significantly affect our cortisol, stress, adrenals, blah, 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 etc.
Absolutely. So simply put, you got to be 80% parasympathetic, maximum 20% sympathetic every day. These days, like you said, Andrew, it's the other way around. We're 90% sympathetic and 10 to 20% parasympathetic. That's why we're just stressed and fat and obese and taking SSRIs and whatnot.
That's really good point because I was going to say that's a really good point because everyone is stressed. They think that it's normal to be stressed all the time. And yeah, the baseline is being always stressed, right? So if you're less stressed than usual, you still might be more stressed than we were, as Andrew said, 2,000 years ago. And if you're extremely stressed, then you should definitely get yourself checked because it might lead to heart attacks, a bunch of other things as well.
Yeah. Blood pressure, waking heart rate, resting heart rate, these are all absolutely there. And one thing I want to mention, when you mentioned Andrew, you mentioned the bear and the tiger and your deadlines at work. The body does not know the difference between getting chased by a tiger or having deadlines at work. So that's something to take into consideration. A stress response is a stress response. So yeah, the body doesn't know the difference between getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger or fucking getting stuck in a traffic jam and being late to work. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Stress is stress, man.
Very interesting. I think you guys have, for the most part, answered my first question because you touched on so many different things. And my first question was, why is the six pack so elusive? Why is it beyond reach for so many people? And overall, you guys have outlined so many different factors that have to be on point. And it's hard to get all those factors on point. But you guys suggested that at 12%, you want to be around 12% body fat and be around 12%. That's when, for the typical guy, you could see the abdominal muscles. But for guys that do want to develop their abdominal muscles a bit more to get that bodybuilder look, what types of exercises would you guys suggest to start off with for, let's say, beginners?
Look, there's a difference between core strength and core stability. So like your planks, your dead bugs, they give you core stability. And things like crunches, sit-ups, crunches and butterfly sit-ups, they give you core strength. So for someone that's just starting off, where I start is the compound lifts, Andrew. I'm sure you agree with this. Like doing your chin-ups, doing your squats, doing your deadlifts, because these things need intra-abdominal pressure to perform correctly. So your abs are working doing all these squats, deadlifts, chin-ups, etc., etc. So I'd say if you're a beginner, just focus on your compound lifts. That's where you start. You know, incorporate some planks, your sit-ups by all means, do your hanging leg raises, your Russian twists. But yeah, incorporate some big lifts where it's going to incorporate, like I said, a lot of intra-abdominal pressure because you are working your midsection doing those big lifts.
Mick, what are dead bugs, you said?
Dead bugs, I can't really demonstrate it. It's pretty much intra-abdominal pressure. I've got my core stable and my limbs are moving. I'm going to have to probably give you a video on dead bugs. It's a really good exercise for core stability and to activate your core as well. So I can't really sort of like explain it. I've got to demonstrate it to show, for you to get the gist of it.
Okay, sure.
I can try to explain it. You're basically on your back,
sure.
And as your right leg goes down, you're on your back and you have your hands and knees both bent. Your right leg goes down and your left leg goes back. Then you come back.
So that's a contralateral dead. There's a contralateral dead bug, there's an equilateral dead bug, and there's a four-way dead bug. Like you said, that's one way of a dead bug. But yeah, it's opposite hand, opposite leg, same side, same leg, same hand, or all four limbs going back and forth, while maintaining your lower back on the ground. Then you'll see. So there's a few sort of explanations when it comes to the dead bug. There's not just the one way, especially for beginners too. But I'm happy to demonstrate that. I'll give you a video of it too if you want that. Like,
sure.
It's really, really cool exercise.
Sure, that'll be great. Maybe we can link in the description for the audience.
Absolutely.
You also mentioned Russian twists. Those are basically when you're holding a weighted ball and you're basically putting it side to side, right?
Yeah, there's an advanced version where you can keep. So you're just balancing on your backside, your feet are off the ground.
Yep.
Position. You can go from side to side, or you can keep your legs on the ground, be in a sort of semi-upright position and go from side to side. If you're more advanced, try and keep your legs off the ground. Beginners,
okay,
feet on the ground, feet. My bad. Again, happy to link a video for a Russian twist.
Awesome. Daniel, Andrew, what do you guys recommend beginners start off with? Do you have any other ideas, or did Mick cover it?
I like to start with covering the main functions of the core. There's anti-extension, anti-rotation, anti-lateral flexion. I'll try to give an example of each. So an example of anti-extension, an easy one would be a plank. Anti-rotation would be a Pallof press. If I can give an example of what Pallof press is. So let's just say there's a cable directly to my right. I grab that cable and I'm pushing out in front of me. So if I'm weak, I'm going to collapse that way, right? So it's anti-rotation. So I'm preventing myself from rotating. It's a good thing. That's a core thing, right? Anti-lateral flexion would be a suitcase deadlift. So imagine I'm picking up a deadlift with only a weight on my right side and I'm trying to stay straight. If I'm weak, I'm going to fall over like that, right? If I'm strong, I'm going to be able to stabilize. So that's anti-lateral flexion. So I would like to include one form of each of them. A suitcase deadlift isn't, like, a beginner can do that. So get it really light, just try and stay straight so it's not super hard. Same thing with the cable. A beginner can do that. It's not super hard. A plank, everyone knows what a fucking plank is. The only other thing that I would add in there, from my personal experience, there's always exceptions for the rule. But because we all sit down, I'm sure Mick and Daniel know this, cross syndrome, lower cross syndrome, blah, blah, blah. So many people are just, the pelvis is tilted, they got anterior tilt, blah, 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 whatever it may be. I personally like to include a lot more lower ab work than I ever do upper ab work. So like I don't even do upper ab work anymore. I just do lower ab work. And what I found is most people that I've trained have the same issue. The upper abs are way more developed than their lower abs. And I just put that down to we're sitting down for what is it, like 13 years of our life, going to school, 7 hours a day or whatever, we're sitting in the chair. That's just not helping our posture whatsoever. This is why so many people have problems with the glute activation, blah, 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 and bad posture and whatever. So me personally, my go-to 4 exercises would be anti-extension. If you're a beginner, a plank. If you're more advanced, it'll be an ab wheel. Anti-rotation will be a pull-up press. Beginner and advanced can do the same thing. Anti-lateral flexion, beginner and advanced can do the same thing. Do a suitcase deadlift. And I like to include some lower ab work. So I would do a lower ab crunch or hanging leg raise, but specifically focus on moving the pelvis, as opposed to how a lot of people do hanging leg raises. They just lift their legs up. If you're just purely lifting the legs up, you're training your hip flexors, not your lower abs. So that's something else to take into account as well. But yeah, they're my go-to 4.
Very interesting. And there's at my boxing gym, there's a guy with a very good 6-pack, maybe I think it might even be an 8-pack. And I always see him doing those ab wheels. And
you gotta you gotta be advanced for that sort of stuff.
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. You can start. Does he do them on his knees or on his feet? Does he come all the way up and stand up, or he's on his knees, Marcus?
No, he comes all the way up.
Up to his feet?
Yeah.
That's impressive. That's very impressive. That is tough. I'm not at that level yet.
He used to be a football player.
He's a practice, man. Let's just practice.
It's interesting that you guys don't recommend starting off with like just crunches and sit-ups. You guys are saying start off with those larger core exercises.
Like Andrew said, target the deepest muscles in your rectus. They're called your rectus abdominals, the deepest muscle. These are the ones you got to target. Doing a big belly and you're doing crunches, you're just burning energy. You're not doing anything other than that.
Yeah.
So do your planks. Yeah, just focus on the deeper muscles, the lower abdominal muscles, like Andrew mentioned.
What happens, Marcus? Try and think of it like it's a different thing. Core stability and visual abs, they're different things. You're not necessarily going to have one if you have the other. So if all you've ever done was crunches, sit-ups, weighted crunches, even if you did lower crunches, that's all cool, but you're just training the surface muscles, what you can see. And there is a chance if you're not doing anything else for stability, you more than likely don't have core stability. For example, let's say we got a guy that's only ever trained machines, so there's never really any stress on his core that stabilizing whatever. So let's say he does leg press, he does leg extension, he does leg curls, he does machine press and machine lat pull down, and then he does crunches and lower crunches. There's not really anything in there that's putting stress on the core for it to get stronger or to stabilize. So if you only have the choice to do one or the other, I would definitely recommend do the core stuff as opposed to doing the surface level stuff. Because yes, you can see it all the time. Like I've seen it so many clients in the past. Like they've got a decent set of abs on them, and they can't stabilize for shit. Like Mick, you would have seen this plenty of times as well. Get them to do walking lunges or squats, and all of a sudden it's like they're fucking this way and a bit that way, and they can't stay upright. Because man, you would think looking at you could do everything, but you've just never trained it. You've just never done the deeper layer stuff. This is why starting with like Mick was the big basics: your squats, deadlifts, lunges, blah blah blah. When you're more like, for example, at my level right now, I don't necessarily have to do. I don't do the big lifts anymore, just personal reasons. So I've been injured before. Blah blah blah. I'm not competing in powerlifting, so I don't see the point in doing a barbell bench press anymore. It doesn't make sense to me.
100-kilo deadlift.
Yes. So I've broken an Australian record, and I still don't even do them anymore. But yeah, just for my goals right now, I just see better movements that can get me to where my goals are. But for your average person, like if I could still go back in time, yes, I would do the big basics, 100%. But at my level right now, I don't really need them for my goals at the moment. So I've got different goals right now. But yeah, your average person, big basics, basic core movements, that's going to develop your foundation for anything else you want in the long run anyway. And it's not to say that those core movements aren't going to develop your surface muscles either, right? But we can say it for the reverse way. So if you only train the surface muscles, you're not developing the core. But if you are doing the core movements, you are developing the surface muscles, right? So if you do some like ab wheel, if you do plank and then you get super advanced, you do weighted planks, and now I'm so strong that I can do the ab wheel, you're working your 6-pack, what most people consider the 6-pack. So anyway you look at it, the best way for your average person would be to do the core movements, which is going to develop your 6-pack anyway. So it's like 2 birds with one stone. or you want to go the wrong way and then you're only developing a six-pack and you're not getting any sort of core stability.
If you're a beginner, just do a test. Do not do anything else. If you cannot do a 1 minute plank, just a normal plank, you shouldn't be doing any other advanced movements. So just start there. If you're a beginner, just aim for a 60-second unbroken plank. Start right there before you think of any other advanced movement.
Gotcha.
Because if you can't do a 60-second plank, you try to do the other advanced stuff, you're going to injure yourself. Yeah, just a plank, 60 seconds straight, nice and easy, then work your way out.
Cool. Andrew, question, just a follow-up question for you, because you touched on different types of abdominal exercises having different effects. Do any abdominal exercises have an impact on the stomach fat? Is it like if you do more crunches because you're using the muscles around where the fat is stored, that fat gets burned, or is that not how it works?
So it's more like a systematic fat loss that you lose. So it's try and think about it like, how can I say, just because I do biceps here doesn't mean I lose the fat here. So yeah, it's the same thing. It doesn't really apply for the abs as well. I'm sure there's some other studies into it and blah, blah, blah. And regardless, at the end of the day, even if it does burn a little bit, it's going to be a tiny, insignificant amount, right? Even if it does, because we can see that. I've seen it in my training. I've seen it through all my clients' training. I've never seen anyone do a ton of ab exercises and the abs in particular get leaner. So even if there is an effect, it's going to be absolutely minuscule. So yeah, there's not really spot reduction. So this was like a myth back in the day. They're like, oh, but I just want to lose fat on my arms. I just want to lose fat on my abs. So it's more like a systematic fat loss as opposed to localized. Now, the closest thing you can get to spot reduction is what we were saying before. If you optimize your hormones, it'll change where the ratios of where you're storing all the fat. The example that we used was cortisol. So if you fix up your stress, you're more than likely going to lose a comparatively more amount of weight on your waist. So that would be the closest that you could get to what you're saying. But yeah, in terms of direct influence from exercise to losing fat in that particular area, I would say the general rule is no. And if there is any effect, it'll be absolutely minuscule.
I agree.
Gotcha. And again, I now see why you guys spent much of this podcast episode talking about all the different facets to get that systematic fat loss, because like you just explained, it's not if you do 100 crunches, you burn fat just localized around your stomach. Are there any other misconceptions about achieving a six-pack that people should know about?
So just on that same topic, so I've found the easiest way to explain fat distribution, this little analogy that I use, just so people understand, because exactly that. So many people still struggle, even with everything we've said, they still struggle to comprehend this. Why is there more fat here and not as much fat here, and this is thicker and blah, 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 blah. So the easiest way I've found to explain that is to think like a dam, like a water and a dam, right? Or a river or whatever you want to say. Now, obviously the water stays surface level, right? It's not like there's more water here and less water here. If there's a waterfall, blah, blah, blah. But assuming we've just got a big dam in the middle of nowhere, the water stays flat, right? But underneath you got, so this part's shallow and then it gets more and it's lower here. It's a bit higher here and it's a bit lower, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want you to think about the bottom parts of that dam as where you store your fat. For example, water here, a lot of people store their fat on their stomach or their ass, right? So if the water level's here, the waist and the ass would be the deep part of the dam. Me personally, I store fuck all fat on my arms. So for me, my arms is the shallow part of the dam, right? Does that make sense? So it's like the body fat's here, that's the baseline. So it's a small amount of body fat. If I have my waist, if that's where I store my fat, then this is the deep part. So I store more body fat here. But the water level's still the same, right? Which means so let's say I'm getting really lean now. Let's say I get down to 8% body fat. This part where my arms are shredded as fuck, but there's still water left here for the glutes or for the waist, right? So you need to get more leaner. Now this is looking lean as well. Now the waist is looking leaner too. So that's the easiest way I've found to explain body fat distribution. So it's not so much, everyone looks at body fat distribution on the surface level here. But in this analogy, I want you to think of body fat the same as water. Water doesn't store down here for one bit and store up here. No, water's always flat, right? The way people looking at it is wrong. They're looking at the water level. You need to be looking at the bottom. You need to be looking at the base. Where's the bottom of the dam? So hopefully does it make sense how I explained it? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's a good analogy. If you have a diagram or a video or something that we could link, that would be good for the audience. But are there any other misconceptions about achieving a six pack, like the spot reduction, the myth of the spot reduction that we just talked about?
I think we've covered.
Yeah, like supplements and fat burners.
Okay.
But yeah, even if you look at, oh no, because there is one fat burner that can stupidly ridiculous, like DNP, if you guys know what that is. But even if you look at like the illegal performance enhancements, the clen and the thyroid and free and all that sort of stuff, most people get mixed up with. So I'm going to use the extreme example, then we can go to supplements, then we can go to nutrition. So the extreme example is obviously steroids and performance enhancements. A lot of people have a misconception. They think that steroids actually get you lean. Not much. That's not their main focus. So, as in anabolics, so if we're talking testosterone and all the other stuff, they may help you lose a bit of fat by extension of gaining a little bit of muscle and helping with protein turnover rate and synthesis and all of that, blah, blah, blah. But the effect is minimal. It's not their focus. Like they don't have any, there's no direct effect of testosterone, like directly that's burning fat, right? It's okay, maybe because it raises your hormones and everything's working, like being a by effect, you lose a little bit of fat, but it's not directly a fat burner, is what I'm trying to say. As opposed to, say, clenbuterol is directly a fat burner. But the thing is, even with clenbuterol, I'm just going to throw a number on it. Even though it's arguably one of the strongest fat burners as opposed to a supplement, it's arguably stronger than any supplemental legal fat burner. Even that at best is probably increasing your metabolic rate by 5, maybe 10%. I don't even think it'd be that high. So it's like, you think about it, okay, we've increased your metabolic output by 5%, which is what? So let's put a number on that. So let's say if your maintenance is 3,000 calories, 10% is 300, so that's 150 calories. So you're burning 150 calories extra per day. And we've gone over the numbers already on roughly what you need. 150 calories extra per day is fuck all. So that's the better frame of thinking about fat loss things, is it's a boost at most. It's not going to do the job for you. It's a boost at most. And again, we're using an illegal performance enhancement example, which is way stronger than any supplemental example. So if we use, let's say we use the example of coffee or caffeine. That's a legal fat burner. People use it for fat burning, right? At most, so your clenbuterol is arguably going to 5 to 10% in metabolic rate. What do you think coffee's going to do? 1, 2% max. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not going to do the job for you. And this is, a lot of people get caught up in that. Oh, I need the right supplement. Man, you need the right lifestyle, you need the right nutrition, you need the right exercise, blah, 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 blah. So I think that's a very big thing that a lot of people get wrong. But yeah, it's definitely doing more harm than good. And I'm guilty of it. When I was 16 or whatever the fuck, I was looking at them. I was like, oh yeah, I need that supplement, that one. What was it, Celtec? You remember Celtec back in the day? So it's the muscle tech and also the creatine. Do you remember that, Mick? Celtec?
Yeah, I remember all that.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're all young and dumb and stupid once upon a time, right? Yeah, we need this supplement. We need this supplement and to this and yeah.
So yeah, you got to be careful. It's good marketing.
That's it. They just want your money. They want your hard-earned cash. That's it.
Exactly. So just a little side note on Celtec, just so people understand why I'm talking about this. Celtec had a study on the fucking bottle, right? And obviously they had the study on the website and everything, but they put it on the bottle. And they said, I don't remember the numbers, but it was something stupid. I'm pretty sure it was 20 pounds in a month. Gain 20 pounds in a month. Here's our study. And that's like a lot of muscle for even if you're on steroids. That's a lot of muscle. That's, if you talk kilos, that's 9 kilos of muscle in 4 weeks. That's absolutely ridiculous. But if you actually look into the whole story, which I actually did years later, I found out the whole story on how that happened. They basically had a guy that was off steroids for years or whatever it was. Here's his weight now. He's 180 pounds. Get him on steroids. He's already been big before, so muscle memory and all that stuff. Get him back on it. Oh, he gained 20 pounds back. So they didn't mention that part of it, that it was the steroids that did it all. So it's, oh yeah, he did gain 20 pounds. He was taking Celtec, but they leave out the other part. So there is very clever marketing. So yeah, all things being considered, the only way to actually get the six-pack is, first off, if you want to actually have bigger muscles, train those muscles, right? But then secondly, you need to be in a calorie deficit in one form or another, whether that's done by nutrition or exercise, that's actually going to help you lose that body fat so that you can see that six-pack. And again, there's the other factors that we mentioned as well. There's your sleep, there's your stress, there's your gut health, etc., etc. But assuming you're healthy and there's no other problems across the board, it's a calorie deficit in one form or another. And supplements are not going to save you. They're a boost at most.
So there's no shortcuts and easy ways to get to that six-pack.
Unfortunately not.
Like I said earlier, man, if it was easy, everyone would have it.
That's why it's so highly valued, because it's so hard to get.
Yeah, and I guess that's a misconception within itself. There's a magic pill or some secret that personal trainers are hiding, but no, it's the basics. Most people know what to do. It's not consistent. They haven't made a lifestyle. That's the reality.
Daniel, are there any exercises that you would recommend to target the abdominals?
I would say Andrew and Mick pretty much covered it all. I don't want to see no planks again because they basically said that, but the only thing they didn't mention, which I do sometimes, is unilateral movements. So, like as an example, like lunges or one bench press, like a dumbbell press, right? So things like that, because whenever you do unilateral movements or like just farmer walks with one hand, right, then you have to stabilize because otherwise you'll fall to one side. So even doing machines, for example, with one hand, right, or dumbbells with one hand or doing one leg at a time, then you'd have to stabilize, otherwise you'd fall. But honestly, just doing compound movements in general will help you with that as well.
Okay, fantastic. All right, guys. Well, I think you guys have covered most of so many different factors as to why it's so difficult to get the six pack, and appreciate your honesty in that there are no shortcuts. It takes consistency, takes tracking, takes measurement. You really got to manage it. You really got to be committed to it from the sounds of it, and maybe get some help because there's a lot to keep in mind when you're trying to achieve this goal. There's so many different factors like you guys just laid out.
Pretty much, look, if you just to make it very simple, if one key takeaway, you're not moving enough and you're eating too much. That's the big picture. But if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty, then apply all the stuff that we spoke about earlier.
So just a little disclaimer, right? I know all the stuff that most of us have said is track, do this, do that. It sounds like it's harsh and there's a lot to do and it's so hard and blah, blah, blah. First off, if you get in a healthy routine, like Daniel mentioned as well, make your environment more suitable to getting results. And it gets easier over time, right? So like for me to do all this stuff right now, it's no stress whatsoever. I'm so used to it. It's just routine. It's nothing, right? It doesn't really require any mental effort whatsoever. And in terms of the calorie tracking and all that, I just want to make sure people know you don't have to do it that way. But if you want the best results possible, it's the best way to do it. Like we said before, you can just eat high protein and do intermittent fasting. Yeah, you're going to lose weight. Like we went over in the examples, there could be some other factors, but yeah, just don't want anyone to get scared about it and like it's too much, it's all impossible, blah, blah, blah. Trust me, even doing the best method possible, like I said, the tracking calories and the tracking the biofeedback, it's less than 5 minutes a day. You put on top of that, let's say you only want to train 3 days a week, half an hour. That's it. That's all you need. 3 days a week, half an hour each. Use that document. As long as you're adjusting for all the principles that you need for where you're at, you're still going to get results. So you don't have to be in the gym 2-3 hours a day. You don't have to be tracking stuff and blah, blah, blah to get results. But it is the best way to do it is to actually track and have that data. It's only going to take you 5 minutes a day. And then you can determine how much time you have to train 3 days a week, 4 days a week, whatever it is. So it's not as hard as what you think. I don't want people to get scared by all the information that we've given them that, it's too much, I'm not going to be able to do it, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's not as hard as what you think. Like that same example I gave you, it's less than 5 minutes a day to do all that actual tracking after you've got the initial knowledge and the initial setup, which is going to take you a week or two at most. It's not going to take you that long.
So I guess the easy shortcut to getting a six pack is to track your calories. Take 5 minutes a day, just 5 minutes a day to track your calories.
So another thing on that, so yeah, obviously, yes, tracking calories. If I was to give someone the easiest way to do it, in my opinion, the easiest way to get a six pack or with minimal effort, like as in they don't want to track, they're not going to do that, blah, blah, blah. I would say intermittent fasting, high protein, and eat your protein first so you get full from it as well. So I would say that'd be the things I would do from nutrition. If you're able to, you try and do like an 8-hour feeding window, 16-hour fast, just because you're going to eat less if you do that. So you get your hunger hormones also get used to eating less as well. So I'd say eat high protein, eat the protein first, eat 2 or 3 meals a day. That's the food part of things, and then you don't have to worry about it. Is it optimal? No. Is it going to get your results? Yes. And in terms of the workout, just do some of the big basics, just basic shit. Squats, deadlifts, bench press, blah, blah, blah. Do a bit of, get your steps in, have a look. If you've got a smartwatch on, it's doing it for you. All you got to do is look at it. You know what I mean? So it's super easy. Even if you don't want to do that, go to the gym, do a bit of walking, maybe a bit of cardio, and that's it. You're going to get results. But in terms of dialing it in perfect and knowing and blah, 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 it's obviously not as optimal.
Awesome. That's great. We pretty much gave the audience the easy shortcut to getting a six-pack. You got to do so many things right, but definitely tracking your calories and being consistent. Before we go, Daniel, I'm very curious about your program. You help clients lose 30 pounds without going to the gym. How do you do that?
I usually work with bigger people because they can lose more weight. I can get better testimonials. That's what I am for. And the reason why I pick not going to the gym is because everybody has their own niche. I don't do keto or vegan or anything like that. So I believe that, as an example, like Gordon Ramsay, right, like the chef, like Gordon Ramsay can make a better meal with 1 pan than the average person can with 5 pans, because it's not about the equipment that you have, it's about knowing what to do, right? So I feel like bigger people, these people that need to get in the best shape possible, they are the people that are most intimidated to go to the gym, to work out. So those people, I'm like, hey, here's another solution. You don't have to go to the gym. Just follow, some basic diet. I help them customize that and all of that. And I tell them, hey, instead of a bench press, you can do push-ups. Let's say push-ups way too easy, you can do diamond push-ups. Let's say that's way too difficult, you can do knee push-ups. Right? So there's different modifications of what you can do to alternate and modify. But I believe for the people that really need to lose weight, that are too intimidated to go to the gym, they just need some basic plan that allows them to get results. And yeah, that's what I do.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Daniel. And conscious of time that although it's nice and sunny here in Sydney and in Thailand where Andrew is, it's 12:30 for you, Daniel. They're in West Coast of Canada. So thanks very much for coming on and joining this discussion. It's obviously Mick and Andrew specialize in this, but you specialize in this as well. And I was very curious to learn from you because of the results you've been getting in terms of the weight loss results. Okay, so yeah. Thanks to all three of you. I think you guys have answered the question as to why it's so hard to get a six-pack, and have given me and the audience some actionable steps to take and some very key points to keep in mind. I like to think of all the things that you guys talked about as the cheat code. It's like the blueprint for how to get the six-pack. So thanks again, guys. And thanks to the audience for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next episode. And let us know any feedback in the comments. If you have questions for Mick and Andrew, you can contact them on Instagram in the description, and Daniel as well if you have any questions for him. But yeah, let us know if you have any questions. And that's a wrap for today. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and until next time, take care. Good.